Hey, don't judge me today. I didn't feel like getting ready. So you got a messy bun, and I put some eyeliner on. That's about it. So, oh, you guys gotta see my shirt. I love it. All right, hold on. It says, "Don't duck with me," and then it got like this little duck on the bottom. Oh, it cracks me up. Okay. So I want to talk about the Wagner trial. Oh, of course, he's yelling in the background. I want to talk about the Wagner trial. It's getting so interesting. If you're not familiar with the Wagner trial, it is basically like like a modern day Hatfield and McCoy's. There's the Roden family and the Wagner family. Hannah and hold on, maybe I can pull up some pictures so I can show you real quick. Roden. Okay, let me show you real quick. Hey, Lynn. Thanks. All right, let me share my screen. All right, well, I'll give you a little rundown, Lex. I did a whole video on it, but all right. So Hannah, this girl right here, dated. All right, so Hannah dated Jake Wagner, this guy, and they had a kid together. They had, I don't know, they're like a really crazy family, the Wagners, these four. They're kind of like, they had like a communal money pot where they all share their money and they all pay each other's bills. And the mom's like super weird and controlling and protective over her kids. And she wants all her grandbabies to call her mom. They try and get custody of all the kids and they jump to all these like conclusions, in my opinion. Well, give me a second. I'm going to stop the camera for a second because I need to wipe my nose. I just had a sneezing fit, so I'm a little bit of a mess. All right, so they had a baby together, and then there was, okay, Lynn, no problem. They had a baby together, and then there was like a custody dispute because Jake wanted the baby because he had heard there was some like, yeah, all four arrested. They're not on trial altogether, so right now it's George's trial. Jake ratted out. Jake testified against his family, and so did Angela, to keep them from being, like, the deal he made was that they don't get the death penalty. But he has to testify against them. So, there's a custody dispute, and he wanted the daughter, and like they're so crazy, the family, that the mom, Angela, she has all their Facebooks on her phone. Like she somehow hacked into like all the girlfriends' Facebooks. George had a baby mom named Tabitha, which she had done the same thing for. So anyway, she saw a message between Hannah and Tabitha telling Hannah, whatever you do, don't give them custody because, you know, I've been through this with them and it'll turn into a big problem. So Hannah was like, oh, over my dead body. Then after she said that, Theraflu drink. I love Theraflu, actually. When I'm sick, Theraflu is the bomb. I like that better than medicine. You'll get there, Crystal Ann. We'll feel better. I'm starting to get a little stuffy too. I think my kid's passing one of them little sicknesses that he gets like once a month at school to me. So anyway, She said, over my dead body. And then apparently it was his dad's idea to kill her. And then they decided, well, if they kill her, they have to kill basically like the rest of the family because they would know or they would be there. And they ended up killing 8 people. It was literally, hey Sabrina, it was literally like a whole family massacre. So first they killed Chris, that's Hannah's dad, and his cousin Gary, which is this guy. Then they went to his oldest son, this is Hannah's brother Frankie, his house. They killed Frankie and his fiance, and their 2 kids were okay. Like, they didn't kill their kids. Brentley was one kid who's 2, and then the other baby was a couple months old, I think. And then after they, all right, so Chris, the dad, and his cousin were at Chris's house, and Frankie's trailer, they were on the same property. So they basically just like walked to one trailer, killed them, walked to the other. Then they took Chris's truck and drove to Hannah's mom's house. So Hannah's mom was living separately at the time because they were separated. They were thinking about getting back together, but they were living separately at the time. So then they killed Dana, Hannah's mom. Then they killed Hannah and Chris, her little brother, who's 16. And then they drove to Kenneth Roden's house, who's Chris's brother, because they knew he would know that they had done it. So they killed him as well. So basically, oh, and Hannah just had like a 5-day-old baby, and they spared that baby, obviously, too, but killed all the adults. And yeah, it was bad. Basically, just like a whole 2 generations, they killed. And can you imagine the mother, their mothers and the kids who don't have parents now? It's just a whole nightmare. So yeah, they basically killed their whole family. And Jake, so Hannah's, with firearms, yeah, guns. They shot them all. Like most of them, like 3-4 times in the head. It was bad. And basically, I'm going to go over Jake's testimony, which pretty much describes, like, goes over the whole plan and everything. So you'll basically hear from the beginning, hey, B. Tim, hey, Coda. But yeah, so in a nutshell, it's like the Hatfield and McCoys, the Wagners were mad because they felt like they were going to keep the daughter from him, and then they killed the whole family. And Hannah Gilley, his fiance, was collateral damage because she had just been there, and Gary was collateral damage because he was there too. All right, let me pull up. All right, so I've been going through. Oh, hold on, let me close this. I've been going through tweets and listen to a couple YouTube videos. So, all right, basically in court, they give the people the option if they want to be recorded or if they want to opt out. Unfortunately, Jake decided to opt out. So I just have to, I compiled like a whole thing from different places and have the best testimony I can give you guys. If you guys want to look yourself, I can give you some names, like Pretty Lies and Alibis, her YouTube channel. She covers it every night and goes over the testimony. She has somebody in there who is boots on the ground. And let me see. James Pilcher, like James Pilcher. And then there's another guy. I forget his name. I'll find it out. But they basically tweet every day. So I'm going to start with day 1 of his testimony. There's 3 days, but it shouldn't take that long for me to explain. All right. So basically his testimony started as, let me see, testified. All right, so they said Jake, he testified with almost like no emotion. He was just kind of like talking almost like it was like a movie that he had just seen. Hey, Parker. And he was just explaining it. They said it might have been a little emotional for him in the beginning because him and his brother George had not seen each other since they were arrested. And now he's here testifying against him. But at the same time, I think he's there to kind of like, I think the family is trying to get George off. So George, according to everyone in the family, like chickened out and didn't kill anybody. But he was active in planning the murders and things like that. Yeah, this is all over basically seeing a kid. Yeah. I mean, the family's really strange. I that's all I can really say. Like the mom like would keep track of her kids' sex schedules and she wanted like her grandkids to call her mom. They were like a communal family, like they all worked and just kind of like threw their money in a pot and they all paid their bills together. But yeah, basically. There's like that horror movie with that really strange family. That's what they remind me of. I can't think of what it is at the moment, but all right, so where was I? All right, so this is the first time they see each other in nearly 4 years. They start asking Jake. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Hold on a second, guys. All right, never mind. It might be going away. So they start asking him about the family dynamics. Jake said he was close to Angela, his mom. He was closer to George and close-ish to Billy, his dad. He said him and George would go hunting a lot. That's okay. I just started reading his testimony, Mel, so you didn't miss much. I'm sure you know this story because it's from Ohio. I'm sure you've heard of it. Okay, so he said him and George would do four-wheelers together. He said he loved George and he smiled when he said it, and that it's hard for him to be there because he loves his mom and dad as well, and he would like to see nothing more than George to be able to go home. He said George was really into hunting and that hey Mike, he treated it much like almost like a science project. He would study, the migration habits of the animals. He would plant foods that would attract the deer. And then Jake said that before all this stuff happened, he liked to go to festivals. He liked to work on cars. He liked to go hunting. That was the kind of thing he did. He went to public school for a month, but they were kind of they were like they were homeschooled for most of the time. They did go to technical school for like a year. They shared their finances like they said. They would pay off each other's debt. They used each other's debit cards. Let me see. All right, so they would have these like family meetings and they would all meet in the kitchen. And most of the meetings were about like how the farm was running and if they needed to like fix things on the farm or they needed to do something to like get things better again. I believe Chris's mother owned the Flying V Ranch. Now, Chris, Billy, and George would often go commit like petty crimes, like they would steal gas, like they would purposely crash cars to get insurance money, you name it, any kind of like wheeling and dealing they can do. They were, they did that. They would get fuel by setting up a pump. They would take fencing supplies, tools, lumber, building material, livestock. Jake also learned how to pick locks. So they said they would mainly steal from big companies since the companies were insured and it wouldn't be like a huge loss for the company. They didn't want to like take from, a hardworking guy rather than like a big company who can, use their insurance to get it back. They did engage in poaching deer, and they would do this like thing where they would shine this really bright light on the deer so the deer couldn't see them, and it would make them freeze. And then they would, kill the deer. I guess like that's how they would hunt. He said he personally liked to shop at Walmart, Kroger, Cabela's, and Bass Pro Shops because they would give him his points back for purchases. He had a joint bank account with George. He didn't have a joint bank account with Angela. They said everybody, like I said, everybody used each other's accounts. And, everyone pulled in money and kind of like they all used it to pay off their bills or whatever. Nobody was really independent. So Chris and Billy, so Hannah's dad, Chris, who was murdered, and Jake's dad, Billy, were actually friends before Hannah and Jake met. Yeah, very strange family for sure. Hold on one second, guys. Okay. Sorry, I had to sneeze. And I'm probably going to have to again. So Jake met Hannah at the Pike County Fair back in 2010. She was in the 4-H tent area. She was only 13, and Jake was 17 at the time. She asked if he wanted to pet a bunny, and he said at first he ignored her, and he started talking to Samantha. Samantha was a girl who dated Frankie Roden, which was Hannah's brother. The one who was killed with his fiance. I guess years before he met his fiance, this girl Samantha had dated him. Samantha, when she testified, she said George was a nice guy. At the time she was all right, so at the time she started talking to Samantha. Where was I? All right, so Samantha introduced Frankie to George, and they became friends. And then, I guess they started, or no, Jake, maybe, or Samantha introduced Frankie to Jake, I think. It was either Jake or George. But anyway, Frankie and Jake started hanging out, and Hannah ended up just kind of like being a tag along at the time, like when they would go fishing and several things with them. And then I guess over time he started to like Hannah, and he would later on ask Dana and Chris's permission to date her. They would go to festivals, they would go see movies, normal things. And then at 16, she got pregnant with Sophie. So they started dating at 13. At 16, she gets pregnant. And then he was, 4 years? So he was 20 at the time. All right, so Hannah lived at the Bethel Hill Road address off and on while she was pregnant, and it was a little more regular after Sophia was born. So Sophia was born on November 18th, 2013. Jake said at 2:30 in the afternoon, he admitted to prosecutors they had committed arson at the Bethel Hill house, and that was their home of 20 years. Some of belongings actually were taken to Chris Sr.'s and stored there, as well as some other locations. He said they also burned a semi-truck back in 2016. I'm guessing they did that, for insurance stuff. The reason Peterson Road was put into Jake and George's name is because, number one, they had better credit, and number two, their insurance records were clear. As we know at this point, Angela and Billy had burnt a bunch of stuff and gotten a bunch of insurance payouts. So then he was asked about the incident where he choked Hannah Mae, and this was kind of a breaking point. Okay. So basically, you could see they did a lot of like petty crimes to get insurance money, which I'm surprised they didn't get caught if they were just burning shit down all the time. Hey, devil. But yeah, they did a lot of like insurance fraud stuff where they burn stuff down to get the insurance money. I'm pretty sure at one point Jake even purposely crashed a car and almost died and had to be pulled out by the jaws of life doing that. All right, so there was this incident where he had choked Hannah Mae, which was kind of like a breaking point in their relationship. He explained that she didn't want to do yard work that day, which he said ended up being like cutting grass or something like that. They all had chores. So the mom and the kid, they were fighting. No, Hannah is the mom. The baby is Sophia. Hannah and Jake were together. They had a baby, or she's pregnant at this point in the story. And he chokes her, and then they break up, and then she has the baby. And then this is Jake's story from like starting from the beginning. So he's going over what happened between him and Hannah. And at this point, Sophia had not been born yet. She's pregnant. But yeah, it all stems from Hannah and Jake fighting over their daughter Sophia. So she didn't want to do yard work that day. And he said she was lazy in her responsibilities around the house. Like I said, the family was like really strange and really like, they all had chores and they all put in their money in like a big pot where everyone paid the bills. So she wanted to be on Facebook that day, and he said that made him mad because not only was he having to do his own work, he was having to pick up what she was supposed to be doing. So he said Hannah Mae was acting like Tabitha, which is George's ex-wife, the one who's on trial right now. And he made clear he didn't like Tabitha, and he said, Tabitha had just like a negative attitude. The whole family didn't like Tabitha. A bunch of stuff happened with Tabitha. That's a pretty good testimony too. If we have time, I can go over that. So anyway, Hannah Mae got pissed and stomped off, and he said that he didn't choke her, but he said he put his arm between her shoulder and kind of at her shoulder under her collarbone and told her to hold her in place against the wall and calm her down. And he did that for like 5 minutes, and basically he was like choking her against the wall. So after that, it pretty much was their breaking point. She initiated the breakup. He wanted to stay together. And then shortly after they broke up, Hannah started dating Charlie Gilly. And she got pregnant by him and eventually moved on to Corey Holdren. So, all right. So Hannah started dating Charlie Gilly. Now, if you remember, Hannah's brother who was killed, his fiance was there. Her name is also Hannah. That was Charlie's sister, Hannah Gilly. She was killed as well. So basically, Hannah's brother Frankie was dating Hannah Gilly, and then Hannah Mae started dating Hannah Gilly's brother Charlie. She gets pregnant by him. They break up. Now she starts dating Corey Holdren, and Jake had heard that Corey abused drugs, and he actually met Corey at one of Sophia's birthday parties, so he had asked that girl, Samantha, that he was friends with to keep tabs on Hannah Mae. And that there was something that, let me see. I think at some point, Samantha didn't want to do it anymore because she didn't want to. Yeah, he choked his pregnant girlfriend over cutting the lawn, in a nutshell. Okay, so Samantha felt uncomfortable. She didn't want to. All right, so Hannah was asking Samantha to babysit Sophia here and there. And then Samantha didn't want to do it anymore because she didn't want to be in the middle of the drama because Jake wanted her to keep an eye on Hannah, and watch what she was doing, etc. So then he became uncomfortable with Corey being around. He said that Sophia had told him that Corey had locked her in a bedroom for several hours and she cried for Hannah Mae, but nobody came to rescue her. She said she screamed for her daddy, which is Jake, obviously. He didn't come either, and when he was working, he said Hannah Mae would keep Sophia, and then when he was home, Sophia would come stay with him. He said Sophia would be filled with terror when he would go to take her back to Hannah Mae, saying that she would grab onto his leg and cry. And he asked Dana what might be going on with her. And according to Jake, he said that Dana said Sophia was being a brat. And basically, Hannah Mae said the same thing. So, like I said earlier, Angela was spying on Tabitha and Hannah Mae's DMs on Facebook. She somehow, broke into their Facebook accounts and seen a message from Hannah saying they will have to kill me before she would ever sign the papers to give them custody. All right, so they went and talked to a lawyer about getting custody. Hannah Mae said she was also talking to her dad's attorney, who was in Columbus, Ohio. Jake didn't believe her. He thought she was kind of passing time, stalling him a bit, and he wasn't for it. So they moved to this newer motive that we really haven't heard. We've heard for years that this was over custody, and custody definitely plays a hand. But he also said he knew there was a history of RAPE in Angela's family as well as Hannah Mae's and Tabitha's, and he was scared that Hannah would let Sophia be molested. And he was worried that Hannah Mae was choosing to date men who were abusing drugs. So at some point, Hannah Mae's cousin said it was that Hannah may have put Sophia to sleep in her room, and Hannah Mae and Charlie locked the door for a long time, and she knocked on the door and they wouldn't come to the door. So he said they really, in late 2015, early 2016, became really concerned that Sophia had either been molested or was going to be. So, in my opinion, I feel like their family blows things very much out of proportion because they like control. And, like, I personally don't think any of that was going on. I think that, they created this narrative because they are like that. And they're crazy. And they can't stand not having control, in my opinion. So I think they just blew that out of proportion, in my opinion. So anyway, so he tells his dad, or I guess they have like a family meeting, and he tells his whole family, and his dad suggests they kill Hannah. And this is where Jake said that confused several people in there. He was saying that Hannah Mae needed to be killed before anything, because if something wasn't done, he thought the same as Jake, that something would end up happening to Sophia initially. Initially, Jake was not on board with the idea to go kill Hannah Mae because it was Sophia's mom. So he discussed his concerns with Hannah. So he said, he was concerned about Sophia being molested to Hannah, and he said the two of them began to argue, and she allegedly said if Sophia would have been molested, they would just have to deal with it, which I don't believe that either. But that's what he claims, that or maybe it was just when people are fighting and somebody just keeps saying something so ridiculous and you're just tired of hearing them and you're like, whatever, deal with it, Maybe it was something like that, because it was just the most ridiculous thing that he was saying that she's like, come on. I could see maybe it going like that way. So she wasn't taking his concerns seriously, and he said that this was the moment, which he had called the tipping point. He knew that they were going to have to kill her. He said it was a month or two between Billy initially suggesting it to him and him actually agreeing. But there is a lot of rumors that it was Angela's idea, and that because Angela was the family planner, and I feel like maybe he's saying Billy because they know the dad's willing to deal with that and trying to get Angela less time, and he was a mama's boy, so I think Angela was the mastermind, but I think he's trying to cover for her, to be honest. All All right, so Jake first suggested maybe they would stage it and make it look like a murder-suicide and make it look like Corey had done that to Hannah Mae and then taken his own life. But Billy said that really wouldn't work, and they started talking about killing Hannah Mae. He said they would have to kill all of them because if Hannah Mae were murdered and the suspicion fell on Jake, that Kenneth, Frankie, and Chris Sr. would come after them. So basically they said, like, if we don't go kill... Because the Rodens were pretty crazy, too. Like, Chris Roden and Kenneth Roden, they had a pretty big weed farm, and they initially thought maybe it was like a cartel thing because they planted like a lot of weed and sold drugs. So they initially thought maybe it was a cartel killing before they were caught. So they knew if they didn't kill Chris, Frankie, and Kenneth, and they had found out about the Wagners killing Hannah, that they would go after them. So Kenneth, Frankie, and Chris Sr. were the intended targets, but they knew with Gary possibly being there, which they did not know for sure he would be there that night, when they left to do the murders. But they knew that little Chris, Dana, and possibly Hannah Hazel would be potential witnesses, so if they were in the house, they would have to be killed as well. And Billy told Jake that him and Curtis had a bond that was better than brothers, and it hurt Billy to say that Chris Sr. would have to die. So Billy and Chris were really close, and he didn't want to kill him, but he felt like they had to. Alright, so Billy said he would take care of the timing and the events surrounding the actual murders, and he wanted to do it on a cloudy night for some reason. He was the one that chose the actual day, so Jake's job was to get all the firearms and silencers built that they would use in the murders, so they went over the purchases that Jake had made for the murders. They bought basically a bunch of mag flashlights and used the flashlights. Like, there's a way to make silencers out of mag flashlights, and that's what they did. They also had a bunch of other things they made. So I might be able to pull up the pictures of that after I read this. So Jake said initially his weapon of choice for the murders was a Ruger 1022, the SKS. For George and then Billy would take a Beretta 92, but the silencer for the Ruger didn't work, and the silencer actually broke the barrel off and made it unusable. So what happened was Jake had bought some flashlights off Amazon, and one of those was a generic brand and the other one was a Maglite. But the generic flashlight, the aluminum, was just way too thin. So with Billy's Beretta, they tried the mag flashlight to make the silencer, but it just didn't work. So they burned the Maglite. He says other items used to make the silencers were thrown in a dumpster. They definitely were able to pull the Maglite out, I'm pretty sure, the dumpster. So Jake said they decided the best way ultimately to make the silencers would be to use oil filters. So in March of 2016, Jake got the freeze plugs for that. Baffling system. So we got the freeze plugs. So they had like a system where they had like drill bits the same size. Yeah, that's what they used, oil filters. They had like drill bits and tap and dies, and they had some system where they did that. I don't know how it works, but so anyway, Jake decided to take the Walther Colt 1911, which Billy actually gave to him, and Billy decided to take the Glock. They welded the oil filter to the SKS and the 1911. So George bought this truck. It was like a black, I don't know what kind. There's a picture of it, but maybe like a Ford F-150 or something. Well, they bought this. Oh no, it was a GMC. All right. So they bought a black, this truck was solely for the murders. They bought it 3 weeks prior, and it was a GMC. It was purchased somewhere between $1,500 to $2,000 from his Uncle Todd. And the truck was late 90s or early 2000 model. Hold on. Jake said this was actually Billy's idea. They modified the bed of the truck, and they made it so like there was a bed inside the bed of the truck, and they could climb underneath the truck bed and hide. Like, Chris would drive over in the car, and George and Jake would hide under the fake truck bed so that, Chris wouldn't think anything was strange. So they modified the trunk, and Jake talks about him and George building that raised bed. They took a 2x4 and then screwed plywood into it so that it caused it to lift where they could and hide underneath. And then they put hay on top to make it look like they were just hauling farm stuff they needed. And that was actually built behind the new barn, which at the point did not have. Hold on. So they built it. Sorry, I'm like reading notes and it was built behind their new barn, which did not have stalls, only the posts. And once the platform was built, they put the hay on, and that was how they were going to be undetected. Jake said they bought the signal. All right, so they bought signal jammers, like phone signal jammers, so they couldn't call 911. The phone jammers were also Billy's idea, and they actually tested it at Peterson Road, and it did work. Jake said he told Angela to buy 2 pairs of ugly tennis shoes. One reason, because they only wore boots. Like, everyone knew that they only wore boots and that they wouldn't wear something like that. Jake kind of, he wore more like Aeropostale and American Eagle, but they didn't like tennis shoes. They always wore boots. So they thought, that nobody would think it was them with tennis shoes. They bought a bug detector. They forged fake custody documents, and Angela was the one that forged Hannah Mae's signature. This was done in the event either or both of them were killed the night of the murders to ensure that Angela would receive custody of Sophia and Vine, and no one. All right, so basically, like, in a nutshell, Angela had fake custody papers drawn up, and she signed Hannah's name to make it look like Hannah said, in the event something happens to me, I want my kid to be with Angela or whatever. Now, I'm pretty sure Angela's mom was involved somehow. I think she went with her to the notary and was like a witness or something. She got in trouble, Angela's mom, put it that way, for like forgery or something because of the fake custody papers. Vine. All right, so Vine is George's son with Tabitha. His name is Bullvine. So they decided to wait till Hannah wasn't pregnant anymore to do the murders. So they made sure Hannah had her baby first. And Jake dyed his hair so he could look like Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead. Now, Jake had like a weird obsession with Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead. I don't know why. He just was like totally into him and wanted to be just like him. He even, all right, so you know that like clip in the Boondock Saints movie where the guy's like, ding dong motherfucker or something like that. He played that video before committing to the murders to like pump himself up. So, where was I? Angela was going to be at home browsing on Jake's Facebook so that police, like if police looked into him, they would think he was, he totally had a gay crush, definitely. He loved Norman Reedus. He was like really obsessed with him. It was strange. He fashioned that he had looked like him a little bit, I guess, and I don't think he does at all, but whatever. So Angela's job was to be home, browsing Facebook with Jake's phone to make it look like he was home at the time of the murders. Billy's Glock was kind of a last-minute decision. It didn't have a silencer, so before they left, they went into the cabin that was about 50 feet from the house and shot it while Billy was inside the actual house, and he said he could not hear it, so he decided to take that Glock that night And if George went with him, where am I? All right, so Jake said that he himself wore black clothes and they were baggy. George wore a ski mask. Jake wore a mask. He said that George's clothes were dark. The gloves were just kind of cheap cloth pair that you get for like $1. He said that he calls the ugly wall. So they wore the ugly Walmart shoes. Billy wore a hoodie. And he said he walked with his bare feet to the truck to avoid any dirt from Peterson Road being transferred to the crime scene. Oh, that's crazy. So they basically walked to the truck with their shoes off, so no dirt from their house got transferred to the crime scene. And they left the house around 9 p.m. and they got into the bed of the truck feet first. So Billy was the one who obviously drove to Chris Sr.'s while, George and Jake were hiding in the bed of the truck. Billy gets out, and less than 10 minutes later, Billy comes back, lowers the gate of the truck, and told them to wait for his signal, which would be walking back from the grow shed or whatever. Norman Reedus is pretty cool. I'll give him that. I like Norman Reedus. All right, so they didn't know for sure if Gary would be there that night, but when they got there, Gary was there. They know Gary's got to be killed, so Jake and George get underneath the truck and basically wait for their dad. I believe... Hold on. All right, so Jake was positioned at the left front tire and George was at the rear tire. The plan for walking back was that Chris would be walking first and Gary second, and then Billy last. When Chris got up on the porch, that was kind of the cue for when George was supposed to take a shot at Chris Sr. All right, so basically they were at the weed tent and then they walked back to Chris's trailer. And when they got back to Chris's trailer, that's when George was supposed to take a shot at Chris Sr. Basically, George freaks and freezes and doesn't shoot. He couldn't do it. So Billy used that he lost his phone excuse or something, and he walks out to them and asks George, why didn't you take the shot? Jake said George wouldn't do it, so Billy went back inside Chris's house with Gary and Chris Sr. Jake heard Billy ask Chris Sr. to call his phone again, so Chris eventually comes back to the door, and Jake said he got to where George was laying and took the SKS and shot at him, but he was aiming for Chris Sr.'s head, and he said that way it would be instant. Well, he missed the first time and panicked. By the time he was firing the second shot, he said he had his eyes closed and he was aiming towards Chris Sr.'s midsection. He heard 2 gunshots from inside Chris Sr.'s house. He said to him, it sounded like a hammer hitting wood really hard. Then he saw Billy running outside, having what Jake calls a nervous breakdown. All right, so... oh, aren't you lucky, Parker? I wish I was in the tub. All right, so if I can break this down for you, imagine a trailer with a front porch on it, right? And all 3 men are standing on the porch. Jake's dad's truck is parked in the driveway, and the back, like where he was parked, they were able to hide under the truck bed without being seen and shoot from the driveway to the porch. So Jake takes the shot and he misses. And the autopsy report shows that there was like wood stuck in Chris's head, which I'm going to guess he hit the door frame first and the wood pieces went into Chris's head, and then he started shooting again and eventually hit him. He said he was aiming toward Chris Sr.'s midsection. He heard 2 gunshots from inside Chris Sr.'s house. He said to him it sounded like a hammer hitting wood really hard. Then he saw Billy running outside, having what Jake calls a nervous breakdown. And Jake said he told Billy it was too late to break down and told him he needed to calm himself down. He said it took about 5 minutes for Billy to calm down. Billy was probably... I don't think Billy was freaking out probably because of everything. He was probably freaking out because he just killed his best friend. one. And two, because there was bullets flying everywhere, and he was sitting on the porch with them, so he probably had bullets flying all around his head. So Chris or Gary, they said he was probably freaking out because the bullets were spraying on their house. Billy, probably had some whiz past his head or whatever. All right, so Gary was murdered. Jake went inside and took the keys to the grow house, which were in Chris Sr.'s front pocket, to get the surveillance DVR. He threw that into the truck. Then Jake goes back inside Chris Sr.'s house and said he saw the bloody drag marks. So basically, they were dragged from the living room into the bedroom, which I believe Billy did. Or I don't know, maybe it was George. He saw the bloody drag marks in the bodies of Chris and Gary that had been pulled into the bedroom area. He said he pulled the blanket off of Chris Sr.'s bed and covered him up, but he doesn't know why he did that. So it was a little weird to people that they were covered up, but not other people. So they thought maybe there was a specific reason. I think it was just because it was the first people he killed, and maybe he was panicking and thinking put something over them. I don't know, but he said he don't even know why he did it. He took their cell phones, which were in their pockets, and he tried to wipe the blood up with a rag and with a rug and walked out. He met Billy and George at the truck, and at this point he said Billy had calmed down a lot. The phone jammer's battery died way sooner than they actually thought, before they even left Chris Sr.'s. Hold on one second. All right, so Chris Sr. had the most shots of anyone. He had 8 gunshot wounds, probably because of the barrage of bullets and panicking, and Gary had 4. So next they walk over to Frankie's house, which is on the same land, and they decide to take Chris Sr.'s truck to do a drive-by, or they walk over to Frankie's and he had the doors locked, and Jake thought they may have to kick in the door. So at this point, they decided to take Chris Sr.'s truck to do a drive-by at Dana's, which is Chris Sr.'s wife. They were separated, which is where Hannah Mae and little Chris and Kylie Mae, the brand new 5-day-old newborn, were. They wanted to see if she was home from work yet, and she wasn't. So after that, they drove to Kenneth and saw that he was home. Now he opened Chris's flip phone to check the time, and he said it was about 3 a.m. And we know this is before Hannah and them were killed, because they were killed after 3 a.m. Okay, so they went back to Chris Sr.'s, left Chris Sr.'s truck there. The reason they took Chris Sr.'s truck is so it wouldn't look super suspicious if Chris Sr.'s truck pulled up into Dana's house or Kenneth's. So they walked back over to Frankie's, and the back door was locked. Jake tried to open the door with a hunting knife, but the tip broke off, so he found an open window. He climbed in, and he let George and Billy inside by just unlocking the door. He sees Frankie's son Brentley asleep on the couch. I think his son was only 2 or 3. Jake said that he was worried Brentley might recognize him because he had been around Brentley, but he eventually goes to Frankie's room. He notices Hannah Gilly was there. So Hannah Gilly is Frankie's fiance. So he shot Frankie, and that caused Hannah to start stirring. So as he's leaning over to shoot Hannah, he noticed that now this is not Hannah Mae. This is Hannah Mae's brother's fiance. Her name is also Hannah, not to be confused. So that caused Hannah to start stirring around. So as he's leaning over to shoot Hannah, he notices that Ruger was in between Hannah and Frankie. That's their baby. It was only a couple months old. He shot Hannah 5 times in the head and Frankie twice. Basically, when they found them, this baby was laying in between them, covering blood. It was horrible. She was collateral damage, pretty much, because she was there. She was just there, and he wanted to use the .22 because he thought it would be quieter, but he also thought that the firing pin on the Colt 1911 would be harder to match due to how unique the markings are when that is fired. So I believe he used the Colt. All right, so Where was I? So they get in his truck. They go back to Christina's truck, and they drive to Dana. Dana's home by this point. She got home from her late night shift. Hannah Mae and little Chris are inside. George and Billy came inside as well. Jake still had a mask on. The door was unlocked. By the way, he said Billy did not wear a mask. George did. Dana was still awake and was on her cell phone when he was in the hallway, he said. She was propped up on her pillow. While in the hallway, Jake said he froze. The newborn Kylie started to cry. He saw Hannah Mae was getting onto her left side to nurse the baby, and she was kind of raised up on her elbow. As soon as Kylie started crying, Dana turned towards the hallway and saw Jake and kind of let out like a gasp. So he shot her from the hallway in the head. He said he spun around and went back to where he was standing, and Hannah Mae turned and saw him. So she kind of leaned on her right elbow, and of course Jake had the mask on, and he said he did not think that she recognized him, but clearly either she heard the shot or her mom gasped. So Hannah did not gasp, but she took a deep breath and inhaled in, and he shot her in the head from where he went back across the hall in his room. He heard Dana making noises. She was moaning, so he shot her again. He remembers shooting her in the neck. He said it was point blank. And then he's all right. So Dana's brother said there was a pillow over Dana's face, but he says he didn't cover her up. He went back to Hannah Mae's room and he shot her again. He said he did not see an entry wound at the point with the second shot. She slid off the bed. So how sick is this? Hey, Melissa Jade. He said he propped her back on her side. He said, I know this won't make sense, but he did this so the newborn could nurse in case it took a long time for someone to find the bodies, and he didn't want the baby to starve to death. So basically, he propped her up so the baby could nurse on her mom's dead body. Sorry, I should have gave you guys a trigger warning before saying that, but how sick is that? Hold on one second. Okay, so I'm just going through, trying to find where I was on my notes. All right, so then he went into Chris's room and said little Chris was asleep. Jake said he walked to the left side of the bed and shot him. Chris was making a noise, so he shot him again, point blank in the head. And he got their cell phones. He said Dana was on Facebook when she was murdered because he looked at her phone when he picked it up. Also, he went room to room picking up shell casings. He thinks he locked the door on the way out, so we know Dana had 4 shots to the head. Hannah Mae had 2. Little Chris was shot 4 times in the head. At this point, the 3 of them drove over to Kenneth, and George was driving their personal truck they had bought for the murders. Jake and Billy were in Chris Sr.'s truck. Billy was the passenger. George pulled over to the driveway about a mile away from Kenneth's house, and Jake drove Billy up to Kim's trailer, to Ken's trailer, sorry. Drove Billy up to Ken's trailer, so Billy just proceeded to bang on the door loudly, and nobody came. So Kenneth didn't have a lock on his door. He only had a padlock from the outside, and he had a sensor that would ding if somebody passed it. But when he would take his blood pressure medication, he slept really hard, so he was probably sleeping hard. And they just walked Billy just walked into the house, and Jake said he just saw a flash of a muzzle, and they left the scene. Kenneth had 1 gunshot wound to the eye. They drove back to Christina's house. They drove back to Chris's house. They left the truck. They locked the door to Chris's house. I don't know why I wrote that. I think it autocorrected. All right, so they locked the door to Chris's house, tossed the keys inside, and shut the door, and they went back to their home on Peterson Road. It was 4 a.m., and I believe they burned their clothes. And let me see. All right, I gotta go to the next page, but that was the first day so far. That's okay, Jen. That was the first day, and then it isn't as long for the second day. The first day is just like was big because the murders or whatever. So let me go through my notes. Give me 1 second, guys. So yeah, they had dogs at Chris's house. I don't know what happened with the dogs because I heard they were pretty mean. But the dogs were just sitting. I believe they had the dogs sitting out on the porch, and they were just waiting out there when Dana's sister got there in the morning, and she found them. All right, so all right, here we go. So they got back to Peterson Road around 4:30 in the morning, and they put the murder truck in the new barn. They took their clothes off down to their boxers. They took off their shoes. They took the shell casings, floor mats from the truck, and the victim's cell phones and put that into a feeding trail that they used to burn things. Jake went inside the house in his boxers and got some new clothes. Angela was awake and she was in the kitchen. He went in. He said they didn't interact at all. Vine and Sophia were asleep. He got the bag that they would eventually bury the parts of the weapons in the barn. He doesn't remember exactly where he got it from, though. So after the sun came up, Jake burns the items. He said they burned the things repeatedly until there was nothing but ash left. And he said they put the ash in the dumpster while Jake was burning all the items. George was feeding the animals around the farm because, farm life continues even after you commit mass murder. Hey, Eve. Billy left the truck. He drove. So Billy sold the truck to, I guess, his niece in Athens. And that's where the truck went. Jake and George took apart the raised platform before he left. So they took apart the platform, and then he took the truck up and sold it to his cousin. Billy just basically showed up out of the blue and gave this truck to Katie, the next day. Surprise, here's the truck. Jake and George are outside the house. All right, so wait, hold on. Who's Bobby? He never saw the truck again after Billy left with it. He actually didn't even know where it went until months. Jake said that he didn't know where it went until months after the murder. So Jake said he tore apart the 3 guns they used in the murders with a metal grinder and a blowtorch, or a torch of some sort. They buried them inside the barn in a duffel bag that he had got from inside. They removed a post and put the duffel bag down in the hole and then buried it there. He said he burned serial numbers off the guns and torched the firing pins so that it would be hard for forensics to link that weapon to any shell casings that might have been left at the murder scenes. That was something he planned before the murders to do, so he said George actually helped dig the hole where they buried that duffel bag. The DA asked how strong George was, and he said George was strong as a bull, and showed photos of that barn on screen, and Jake pointed out where the duffel bag was buried. He asked if they talk about the murders. Jake said not often, that he tried to erase that night from his memory, and he couldn't bear to think of what he had done without immense guilt. Billy and Angela asked Jake if he needed to talk and said they were willing to listen. He said to them not to mention this stuff to him and that he had it covered and he was bottling his emotions up. Oh, yeah, I seen that about the serial killer, Mike, about the daughter who's saying that her dad killed a bunch of women and they would have to, bury the women. It's really creepy. He made his kids help bury the people. So the morning of the murders, They start deconstructing the weapons and burning their clothes. They went to a building that Angela had purposed in the hopes for selling it for profit, and it was about 30 minutes away from the Peterson house. But on the way there, they realized they had forgotten their chainsaw, so they turned around to go back home. Angela called while they were on their way back to Peterson and told them to stop what they were doing and come back home. She didn't say why, but they were already on their way back. When she called back at Peterson Road, they got a call from someone named Andrew Carson. He's a person he had met at a memorial four-wheel ride. Andrew wanted to know if Jake knew what was happening over on Union Hill Road, and Jake said he had seen it on the news, and Jake said on the phone with him that he acted shocked and mournfulish, and that his word mournfulish while on the phone with this dude. Hold on, let me see. Like, that was the word that he used, mournfulish. Such a weird word. All right, so Billy watched news coverage of the murders that morning. The kids were awake, but they were watching cartoons in George's bedroom, and Jake said he never watched the news on a normal basis, just ever. He really didn't watch the news, but he said, remember seeing a helicopter circle Chris Sr.'s house, and they talked about just what was on the TV. He really didn't go into any detail. Jake was basically supposed to return Sophia that morning to Hannah Mae around noon because he got in her a day early, which was pretty, convenient. So he called Chelsea Robinson. Chelsea was Brantley's mom, Frankie, her brother Frankie, who was killed with his fiance. He had his son from another woman, Chelsea Brantley, who was sleeping on the couch, if you remember. So, he was asking what happened and also wanted to inquire about Ruger and Sophie. So Chelsea told him the kids were at the hospital. He went inside and told Angela to watch Sophia and decided to go to the hospital. When he got there, he talked to April Manley, and she was the one who cried and said it haunts her to think about him hugging her now. She said, I had to wonder if he still had my baby's blood on him when he touched me. That just broke my heart talking about it. So I guess April's Brantley's mom or grandma. Hannah Mae said he wanted to get Kylie and take care of her. Or he asked about Hannah Mae and said he wanted to get Kylie and take care of her, but not in a custody way. April let him know she had rode with one of the kids to the hospital. I believe it was Kylie she rode with, and Jake was told by staff that he couldn't see the babies and could not receive any updates about them. He actually told April that Hannah may have tried to call him the night she was murdered, and he ignored the call. And that was true. She did try to call him, and he didn't answer, probably to talk to the baby or whatever. He said he wasn't there very long and went back home. A woman contacted Jake to check on Sophia's welfare, and then the next day after the murders, Jake contacted his custody attorney to let him know Hannah had been murdered, and he said that they didn't use the forged custody documents that gave him custody of Sophia in the event something happened to Hannah. They all concocted up, and he was given custody, obviously. I think they did use it. I don't know why it said didn't. I think they did use the forged documents. But he was given custody because Hannah was murdered. Billy and George and himself, they went to all the funerals of the Rodens. They also went to Kentucky for Gary's funeral. Sophia did not attend any of the funerals, even the one for her mom. About 1 or 2 weeks afterwards, he didn't tell her. So he didn't tell her about the murders. He just told her that her mom was in heaven about 1 to 2 weeks after the murders. And then Angela created a GoFundMe for Jake, which is just so sick. She created a FundMe basically saying, we need money because I have to pay for all of these legal fees and getting custody of my daughter, and her mommy was murdered, and now, I'm a single dad doing the best I can. I mean, it was terrible. It was this sappy GoFundMe making him out to be Father of the Year, and he got $1,000 from it or something like that. Yeah, it said, it had a photo of him and Sophia, and it says, "My daughter is Sophia Wagner. She's also the daughter of Hannah Roden. Unfortunately, Hannah Roden was one of the victims of the Roden family in Pike County, Ohio, where 8 members of the same family were murdered before the death of Sophia's mommy. I only had my daughter half the time. I wish I could have had her more, but Hannah and I were separated. Now I need help financially with all the attorney's fees and expenses and extras to help her cope with the loss of her mom and to acquire full custody of her. She's only 2.5 years old, and these are not expenses I was supposed to have. I was supposed to be able to spend time with her and give her a happy childhood. Now I have to work extra hours and do not get to see her much. She's asleep when I leave for work and usually asleep when I get home weekends. We're basically all we have. And Sophia and I are just asking for enough to settle the fees that we acquired due to the horrific tragedy to her mom. He says they want to get their lives back and that he hates to see his daughter cry." And basically, Angela set that up. Of course, I don't think he would ever have written anything like that. All right, so Jake, in September of 2016, Jake got worried that maybe something was going to be bugged because they had an interview with BCI. They were going to get their phones tapped, so around this time, Billy told them to dig up that bag and that had the gun parts in it. And Jake and Billy put the gun parts and also the hunting knife that he broke off from Frankie's door into 3 different 5-gallon buckets and filled those with concrete, which was used to anchor a geese house that was put in a pond on Flying W Farms as a gift to Billy's dad, who was dying at the time. Jacob said he built it for the most part, and when it was finished, they took it to the farm. Jake and George got into the water and put up the geese house. It stayed there until after their arrest, and then they ended up pulling it out when they searched the farm. Going down my notes, sorry. Alright, so Jake was then asked about George and Tabitha's relationship. He said he knows that she left on November 10th or 11th, and he remembers this specifically because the next day was his birthday. There was so much chaos that nobody remembered little Jakey that nobody remembered that he turned a year older. Nobody remembered his birthday. Angela was threatening to get her. So there's a big fight, and Angela was threatening to get her gun when Tabitha was leaving. And Tabby was in a state that night. He was in the kitchen when this all went down. She left. He saw Tabitha hitting George. Jake said he was trying not to offend anyone. He said women get an emotional state of mind. They start slapping with both hands. He said he did not see George hit her. And then Tabitha said she was leaving, and according to Jake, forcefully pulled Vine off a chair. George kind of intervened and said she was not taking Vine with her. And at this point, he said Tabitha hit Vine's head on the door frame as she tried to get past George, who was trying to block her. Tabitha essentially threw Vine to George, and then she left. And I believe Angela got frustrated, threw her hands in the air, and said, "That's it, I'm getting my gun," and went after Tabitha. Tabitha went outside. They went looking for her in the barn. I think Tabitha hid under a car, and she could see flashlights. So it was dark, and they were looking for her with flashlights, and Angela had her gun, and Tabitha was hiding under the car. And then I guess when when they stopped, she left on a bike. And then Jake and George got in a car and went to look for her, and they came upon her about a mile down the road away from the house. And Jake said he didn't see George hit her at all during any of this, but when they pulled up to the gas station, Tabitha went inside. So Jake said he told George she was probably going to call the cops, and he told him, "You need to be the first to call and make that report." So They didn't kill they killed 8 people. Tabitha wasn't killed, but Tabitha was the one who messaged Hannah and was like, "Hey, I've been through a custody dispute with George. It's bad. Don't ever give them custody." Hey, Wyoming Adventures. Hey, Allie. But yeah, they killed 8 people in all, but Tabitha wasn't one of the people they killed. Tabitha actually testified. But you can see how crazy this family is, how controlling they are. Just, I guess that gives a little insight about, how they are. So George didn't really want to do it. And Jake said, "Look, I can't do it for you, but you need to call." And ultimately he did, he remembers. Hannah Mae showed up later. So they went back in time before Hannah Mae was killed to bring up this fight between Tabitha and George. All right, so they asked him about the bodies. He said he couldn't really remember much about the bodies. He just kind of blanked out. They also talked about Angela accusing Tabitha of trying to poison them. There was kind of like they all got a stomach bug and Tabitha didn't get one. So they all thought at some point she had tried to poison them. And that's why there was a custody it started a big fight and custody situation between them. And eventually they had decided to move to Alaska. Jake had visited Alaska before and he really liked it. And then he always wanted to go back. So they went in May of 2017. They went to look for work. They found a place to live. So this is like a year later, I guess. They go to Alaska. And they find a place to live. And they start working. And as soon as they get to Alaska, they find out that BCI is on the farm. And they're searching the farm. He was upset and mad at Agent Schneider. Mostly he wasn't scared. He wasn't concerned about them finding things. But the 4 Wagners, he said, had 2 talks that he remembers what to say if they were questioned by BCI. They agreed on the alibi that they would use, which was they were at home watching a movie that night. They couldn't remember the name of the movie. They just, if they would have, why not say Boondock Saints if they like what's his name so much? But anyway, they don't remember the name of the movie that they all watched, but that was their alibi. Billy said not to fall for the games BCI was going to play, and no discussion about custody issues with Hannah Mae. He said the family never coordinated what they would say to BCI directly, just more of an alibi and things like that. But he says they were interrogated after crossing the Canadian border into Montana on the way back from that little scouting trip. They didn't say much after being interviewed because, as we know, they all suspected that the cars were bugged, so they didn't really talk in the cars. He also accused BCI of giving Sophia and Vine what they call sleepy Kool-Aid medicine, and we know they took the kids to the ER, but they tested negative for any kind of sedative. He acknowledged that I don't know how they would. I don't know the story behind that, but it sounds interesting. I'll have to go back and see that. They all thought that Tabitha had been brought up to the border that day while back in Ohio. They stayed in different hotels for about a month. And when they went back to Alaska, the reason they went through Washington State not back through the border is because they did not want to put the kids through another incident like that, what they had when they came back in. So they eventually moved to Alaska in 2017. And they got word that BCIS was back on the farm with digging equipment. Jake said he asked which barn they were digging in, but he doesn't remember why he asked. He does remember when that media release came out asking people who dealt with the Wagners concerning guns and cars to please let them know. So I guess the police put out like a public statement saying whoever, gave the Wagners guns or anything, please come forward. Hey, Jameson. And, all right, where was I? The press release came out while in Alaska. Jake worked for a place called Buddy's Garage. He was the main mechanic there. George was also there, and he worked at a marine and diesel place. And for a construction company, Billy worked at a scrapping business, of course. Angela didn't work. He said they didn't steal gas while they were in Alaska because it was pretty obvious because it was a pretty small little area they were living in. People would probably know it was them. They went to church periodically, but mostly it was Jake and Sophia. He doesn't remember the pastor mentioning that the press release to the church so Elizabeth testified that the pastor told them to not pay attention to the press release. They were innocent, don't buy into the hype. So he was asked about his ex-wife Elizabeth. So Jake met Elizabeth in Alaska. He couldn't even remember her last name, which is like so shameful. Funny that it's actually Freeman. They met at a church. They talked on Facebook. They started dating. He taught her how to drive stick shift. Sophia got along with her. George and Angela were upset that Jake wanted to call Elizabeth mom. And Jake said it was never mentioned that it would confuse Vine. If she did, I believe that's something that Elizabeth testified to. Yeah, I think she testified to that, something about that. They made Elizabeth sign papers that she would never try and get custody of them. But yeah, they dated for like 9 months, I think, and then he rushed for her to marry him because they basically, like, things weren't working out in Alaska and they wanted to move to Missouri, and then they went to move to Missouri and things didn't work there and they ended up back in Ohio. He proposed on the beach. He don't remember what time of year it was. They had to move up their wedding 2 years because the plan to move back down to the lower 48, and he was worried long distance engagements may mean the end of things between them. So basically, he rushed the marriage because they were moving back to the States. They wanted to go to Missouri, I believe, because they wanted somewhere where it would snow because the kids love snow, but they wanted somewhere they could have like a farm. They ended up going to Missouri, staying in a hotel for like 7 days. They couldn't find work and things didn't work out. And then I think Billy was just kind of over it because his dad was dying, or no, his mother was dying, I think. So Billy went back and then they ended up joining Billy. Thank you, Wyoming Adventures. I'm trying. So I wrote a bunch of notes, so it's kind of hard. Like, if I sound like I'm jumbling some parts, but I'm like trying to read off. When you write notes and then you go back and you're like the way you wrote them, you're trying to like decipher them. That's what I'm going through right now. So, yeah. Elizabeth ends up not wanting to be married, and they just kind of like let her go back home, I guess, because they already had enough trouble. They just didn't want to deal with it, so they just dropped her off at this train station and like called it a day. And I think they were maybe afraid that she was gonna like maybe talk about them or something, and get them in trouble. Elizabeth recalled being threatened with a Walking Dead bat. I think Jake, like, they had a bunch of problems with her too. They were worried about how she spoke, how she answered questions, things like that. And then so basically Sophia lied and said that Elizabeth had done something to her, and then they made Elizabeth move out. And then Elizabeth moved in with someone else. But while Elizabeth was living with another girl, she decided she didn't want to be with Jake anymore, even though he was trying to work it out. And Sophia had admitted she lied because she just wanted attention from her dad. But at that point, Elizabeth was done. She didn't want anything to do with it, so they broke up. And, hold on. Trying to find where I was. All right, that's that one. And then today's pretty short, like the notes I have from today. I'll read them to you real quick. And that will be it about that. And then if you guys want to talk about Quentin, we can for a little bit, but this won't take long because the last day was kind of short because there was a lot of delays. So Jake took the stand about 10:30. He testified for about 20 minutes before another delay. The fire marshal was called for possibly overcrowding in the courtroom, and they didn't get back till about 1:45. They showed the actual murder weapons today. Jake identified all parts from all 3 guns that he had cut up and that were recovered from the cement buckets in the Flying V Ranch. Jake testified he told his father he had no regrets about the homicides, but that he lied because he didn't want his father to think he did something that wasn't worth it and then unalive himself. He said he was arrested in November of 2018. Soon after that, his grandmother, Rita Newcomb, recanted and admitted she didn't notarize the custody documents. All right, so I guess she lied about notarizing them, that she supposedly got them notarized and they were like fake notarized. He said that affected him and made him not want to lie anymore. It seemed like it was the answer I was looking for, that it was an answer from God. It was what I was praying for. Rita had pleaded guilty in December. Shortly thereafter, Jake confessed to his lawyers to get it off his chest. Jake's lawyers eventually approached prosecution about a possible deal that was reached in March 2021. He actually entered his plea April 21st, 2021, the 5-year anniversary of the murders. Jake told investigators where to find the murder weapons, then the truck they used. He knew his father had given it to his cousin Katie in Athens, Ohio. Items in those concrete buckets included not only the guns and parts, but live ammo for a .40 caliber Glock, as well as 9mm, the kind he used in the Beretta when he fired the silencer that ruined that gun. There was also a lot of discussion about what the 2 brothers talked about in the truck that they knew was bugged. Jake admitted saying, "I know you're listening, Ryan," in the truck, referring to lead BCI agent Ryan Schneider, whatever his name is. He also recounted brother George getting a text from BCI with a picture of Jake holding the 1911 they recovered from the laptop. They immediately called off work for a family emergency. Now, they were able to say that it was him holding the gun because him and Hannah got matching tattoos on their ring fingers, and you could see the tattoo in the photo, and they were able to match that photo with the gun that was used in the killings. So they were able to nail them that way. Jake also said that George initially didn't want to go along with the murder plan and was reluctant to participate. He said that he was unaware if George went along to protect Jake from his father, Billy. Jake said he saw Chris Sr. on the floor in the recliner dead with shots to his head, and when he went in the trailer the first time. When he went in the second time, he said bodies were removed into the bedroom. Before cross-examination, prosecutor Angela Canepa finished her direct by going through all the plea agreements Jake had reached and said he did so willingly. He also admitted asking Hannah to spy on George's ex, Tabitha Clater. But he also said that the entire family helped plan, execute, and cover up the murders, including his father, mother, brother, and George. I'm trying to see if I wrote anything. If I have more notes. I just wanted to see if there was anything that I missed of. I don't think I did though, but no, I think I pretty much got everything. So yeah, that is Jake's testimony so far. Tomorrow, he is being cross-examined, but like I said, he has opted out of being recorded, so you have to follow people on like Twitter. Pretty Lies and Alibis does like a daily. She has somebody who is boots on the ground, and she does a really good job. I get a lot of info from her because the guy she said the guy's name on her. I think I found it. Yeah, Chasing Paper 89 here. I'll give you this link too. He is her source. Sorry, I keep having like a scratchy throat. Yeah, so there's a couple people in there. If you just go on Twitter and you look up like Jake Wagner and hit latest, you'll find a bunch of people in there tweeting like on breaks and everything. Thanks. But yeah, it's pretty wild. Like the whole story is just crazy to me that like 4 grown adults, hey Jenlo, like 4 grown adults could literally, put this together and all agree on doing it. Like you would think at least 1 out of the 4 would be like, hey, this is a bad idea, but apparently not. Jen Lou, I just went over all like everything I know about Jake Wagner's testimony for the past 3 days. But I know you've been following it, so if you have any input, feel free, or if you want to come up. I have like so. Oh, that's what I have. So Beth, I believe, testified right before I started watching hers, but I didn't get all the way through it. But she tells the whole story. She basically tells the whole story of like how they met and everything about it. So that was pretty good too. You just did a true crime experiment in your bathtub? Oh yeah, well, like they were saying how they all kind of like they all use their money, put their money in together, and have the same bank accounts. They use each other's bank accounts. Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, sorry, I had to mute YouTube. Okay. Like I was an amateur for a second.
I do that all the time.
That damn premium gets me.
You would think after all this time that I would know, like,
me too.
that I should do it before I get on someone's panel, but I don't.
But if you click the link from YouTube, that's where the problem comes in. Because like they're supposed to, redirect you, but because you have premium, it doesn't shut YouTube off. And there you are, echoing like an amateur. How are you, babe?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What have you been keeping up with it? What's the last thing you watched?
So I watched Elizabeth. Well, most of Elizabeth. I got like 3/4 of the way through hers.
Okay.
And I've been following Jake, like, through tweets and everything. I've kind of, like, just compiled as much information as I could.
Yeah.
About Jake's.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me switch headphones because I feel like these are always, like, weird. So let me switch headphones, and then I'll be right back. Give me just a sec. I'm just going to mute.
Okay. Parker, what? She said, this is her bathtub experiment. I took circumference of Quentin's head and put it into feet. It's about a foot minimum to cover Quentin's head fully. That's 28 liters. To see if there's something happened in the bathtub. How did you know? Wait, how do you know the circumference of Quentin's head?
Parker, you're the things that you do. Although that's the right way to do it. It's a little unsettling that you would be able to figure out from photographs the circumference of his head. I'm a little unsettled, Parker.
Right. It took nearly 5 minutes to fill a foot of water. For their drowning theory to be legit, he would have had to been unattended for at least 5 minutes. I just don't see that theory because I feel like he's too old. Unless he got up and like slipped or something, I just feel like he was a little old for drowning in the tub.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's possible, but is it likely? Right. So did you watch the kerfuffle that happened this morning in court? Of course not. Because you weren't over in my stream where you should have been because I covered it,
No,
ma'am.
I was sleeping for a little bit, and then I
Oh,
woke
like a
up.
normal person.
I went back to bed, and then woke up and crammed it all in. But I did hear something about the fire marshal.
Well, yeah, that I'm talking about the hearing that was held today.
Oh, about if they could do it, if it could be aired or whatever.
Well, see, yeah. So what had happened was, okay, Ohio has a state law, or it's part of their like constitution, that you can opt out of being recorded, either video or audio. You can opt out of it altogether,
Uh-huh.
or you can opt out of being photographed or recorded, but your audio can be played. Okay. Well, the media, they filed a motion, and at first the judge upheld it. Right? He said, "No, they are allowed to opt out. It is what it is." Right?
Yeah,
Well, they appealed it, and the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals
yeah, I heard
over
that.
overruled it. Okay, so then there was this argument. Y'all brace yourselves, because this is the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my entire life for why Jake Wagner's audio or video testimony shouldn't be played. Because in prison, basically, snitches get stitches, and that
Oh my,
because Jake is testifying against a co-defendant who also happens to be his brother, he is in danger. Let me tell you, let me stop you right there. Let me just stop right there. Jake was a snitch the second he signed that plea agreement, which was televised. The whole hearing where he took the plea agreement and pled guilty, the entire thing was televised, including the part where he knew and was told that he had to testify against his father and his brother.
not only that, but if anything, I think he's helping him. Like, I mean, he's still admitting that he was involved to some extent, but he's getting them off the death penalty, and he's saying that he didn't kill anybody.
Right.
So I feel like he's doing him a favor, kind of. Like, why would he be in danger?
Well, here's the deal, because he's testifying. He's cooperating with the man.
And
That's
don't they
why.
have him in like solitary anyway because of the case? Like,
Well,
they usually do that.
Jake isn't at his permanent residence, okay, because he hasn't actually been formally sentenced yet. See, in order for the sentencing to go through, Jake had to testify at George Washington Wagner the Fourth's trial, his brother, and he has to testify next year at his father, George Washington Wagner the Third, also known as Billy Wagner. He has to testify at his trial too.
And doesn't
To,
Angela have to testify too?
yes. But
So I guess
Angela's,
those two will be the last.
well, the way that it was supposed to go was Jake was supposed to testify, and his testimony was going to probably take probably 2 days on the direct, probably half of the day on cross, because the defense, their cross examinations have been very brief, very brief. Even I think both ex-wives, Tabitha, which is George's ex-wife, and Jake's ex-wife, who he met in Alaska. Bless her little heart.
Oh, I know. I felt so bad for her.
Yeah, it was. But so I think the cross examination of both of those witnesses in total might have been about 2 hours total, if that.
Wow. I always love a good cross exam too. So that's
me too. Well, I didn't like the way that Mr. Nader, which he is the bald gentleman sitting next to George, he cross-examined. Yeah, he cross-examined Tabitha. I didn't like how he did it, because he asked her questions that were really unnecessary, and really they were designed to essentially humiliate and embarrass her, quite honestly.
Make her look like crazy?
Well, no, make her look he asked her questions about the essay that happened to her as a child,
Oh
which was by her
gosh.
stepfather. And
What does that have to do with anything?
well, nothing, but it was to embarrass her.
Yeah. That's mean.
Because a lot of I mean, the way that George and Tabitha met is odd. First of all, she was like 11, or yeah, like 11, and he was like, I don't know, 14 or 15. And
So it's
they,
kind of like Jake and Hannah's
yeah, but
situation.
this was a setup. Like her mother brought her over to, her mother knew Angela's mom, Rita, and brought her over there. And I mean, she was spending the night over there, and it wasn't very long before she was, 11 years old and sleeping in the same bed as George, and he was like 14 or 15.
Yeah, that's
It wasn't arranged that she was to be George's girlfriend. She was actually there to meet Jake, and it was her sister that was supposed to be for George, but it just didn't work out that way. But anyway, he just what the way he did it was unnecessary. I understand what the reason for cross examination is. It's to impeach direct testimony. Everybody gets that, but the way he went about it was unnecessary and actually didn't impeach her testimony at all, and made her more sympathetic towards the jury. Now, and I thought both of those witnesses were like integral to um, the state. I see their game plan now. It took me a minute, but I get it now. They're, they recognize that Jake Wagner's testimony is going to be sliced and diced and dissected on cross exam because he took the deal and he's changed his story a couple of times. Okay. So they want to shore up a conviction without really needing Jake or Angela's testimony. And I think that they've thus far they've actually really done a good job of that. When Tabitha testified, she was able to talk about the inner workings and the dynamics in the family prior to the murders, right? And when they had Beth up there, she knew the Wagner family after the murders, and so she was able to talk about the family dynamic, and that I thought she did really well. But what really cinched it, I think, is the audio, and there's more audio to come of the tapes, of the intercept wiretaps. But yeah. So George's defense is, I
so
didn't
have they
know.
played the wiretaps?
They've played some of them, and they're very bad, Kate. They're very incriminating. I mean, you have George, whose defense is, it's not my fault I was a Wagner, and born a Wagner. I was distancing myself from my family, and I didn't know anything about it. All right. Nothing about this plan. But then you hear the wiretaps, and there's a very specific conversation between George and Angela, where they're talking about the home that they eventually rented in Alaska. And they're going to put it in George's name. And George is fine with that. So Angela and George are having this conversation about this home, and Angela is telling him about this home, and George is sounding excited about it. But more than that, he is asking follow-up questions. And there's another conversation between Angela and George, where George is talking about a grandson and grandfather. They have a business in Alaska. They sell deer jerky in the summer, and they make $80,000 or something like that, and how excited. So he's making future plans. Does that sound like distancing to you?
No, not at
Yeah.
all.
So
So,
yeah.
do you think that Billy came up with the idea, or do you think it was Angela? Because they're trying to say it was Billy, but part of me feels like it was Angela.
Personally, you know who I think the masterminds? I think Angela is the one that came up with the idea. But what I will say is, and I was surprised by this, I don't know how much of it I believe, though, because one of the things that Jake said, and I'm getting the reports like you are. Like, I obviously don't have an inside scoop, or I couldn't hear any of the audio. But I wish. I was so mad at today's ruling. I was so mad. But anyway, I won't talk about that because I was just
can't
too
believe that
frustrated.
they're giving this guy like the choice. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, yeah,
why?
he's not like a regular witness. He's not
No,
like one of the family members who got up there and testified. Like I
he
wasn't
murdered
upset at
5
all.
people.
He
Like,
murdered, well, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like, and helped plan the whole thing.
And also helped, he planned it, carried it out, and
Mhm.
then helped destroy evidence and keep from being caught. I mean, that's the truth.
Yep.
But Billy Jake has said that according to his testimony, he is the one that told Angela Wagner to go and buy those shoes from Walmart. I don't believe that. Mainly because one of the things in the article, several articles that I read that repeated, so I feel like because so many people have said it, there must be some validity to it, is that when he was testifying a lot of times, and these aren't hard words, he said, he kept saying, I can't find the right word. And I heard him speak on those wiretaps, and he's not, I mean, let's be clear. He's not a genius, okay, but he is very familiar with being a criminal because him and George were committing criminal acts way before murder. They were stealing all kinds of shit and
Oh yeah,
helping.
when I heard about all that, like crashed in the
Mhm.
car on purpose,
Mhm. Mhm.
and almost
Burning down the
dying.
houses, burning down
Yeah.
houses to collect the insurance money, crashing George's
Wow.
car to get the insurance money. Yeah, this family is like, I said it like a million times. They're like the Fireflies from The Devil's Rejects and House of a
Yep.
Thousand Corpses. That's who that family
That's
is.
yep. I was trying to think of the name of that movie.
Yeah, that's who it is. But they're like, okay, so this is what I think it was. I think when Angela saw that post, her and Jake are very close, and you have to listen. It's one thing when people are in the courtroom or like telling you, it's another thing when you actually like hear their conversations. There
Uh-huh.
is a different tone that Angela takes with Jake than she takes with George. George is an annoyance to her. Like, I can't tell you how many times it sounded like she sighed on that phone call. Like, I could almost hear her
Like
rolling
maybe
her
she felt
eyes.
like George was soft or something. Like
I think I don't think, there was definitely no love lost between George and his mom. I think George was closer to his dad, if I'm being honest, and Billy and
and
Jake was
Jake.
closer to his mom. Yeah. And so what I think is that I think it was a combination of both of them. And, but I definitely think that the person who worked it all out and went through the if then but clauses was absolutely Angela. And you can
Yeah.
hear it when she's talking about this house, renting this house in Alaska,
I'm
and
gonna have to go
about
back
like
and do that.
yeah, because she's like explaining how they're going to do it and the own. And let me just say, this thing sounds like a sham. First of all, it's for sale, but they want to do owner financing because the bank won't lend on it due to the renovations that have been made. That sounds like why in the hell would you ever that how would you why would you buy a home that way when you what if something happens and you have to sell it and you can't fix it in time
Yeah.
to make you know what I'm saying? Like, that just seems ridiculous, but you can hear those wheels turning and she's selling George on this bullshit idea. It's a terrible idea, but whatever. It's just weird to hear. I'm not weird, but it's interesting to hear their whole like the family dynamic. So I don't actually
Yeah.
think they need I don't think they actually need Jake's testimony now. I think it's helpful, but I think the jury will
So,
still convict without it.
I mean, do you think they'll be satisfied with his cuz I know the one guy asked like if so far they were satisfied with his testifying, and they said it's too early to tell. Like
I
he
think
asked the prosecution.
it's going to come down to well, this whole hearing thing like threw a whole monkey wrench into it because yesterday Jake only actually testified for like 10 minutes. The
Yeah.
rest of the day was taken up with this situation, and then After lunch, he testified for a little while. Then this morning was all like till about like, I don't know, 10:30 was all about the whether they were going to make him be recorded or whatnot. And I still think that the judge should have compromised and said, okay, fine,
Yeah.
no recording but audio, because
Yeah,
everybody at the everybody at the
audio would even be fine.
everybody at the jail already knows he took a plea deal.
Yeah.
So how is he more in jeopardy once they hear what he has to say, for Pete's sake? Plus, it's being reported on the news.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It's ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
I found this article. I emailed it to you, but I felt like...
Okay, I got a little scared because Gmail was like, so-and-so has never used this email to email you before. And I was like,
I changed it to my channel name. But here, I'll read it to you.
Okay.
So,
thank you. I didn't want to click it because I didn't think you did anything, but what if, like on purpose, but like what if something, because I've never had, Google's never said nothing like that to me before. They're like, go ahead, open that shit.
So I guess the Cincinnati interviewed Jake Wagner on July 29th, 2016. Wait till you hear this crap.
Okay.
Rodin case, quote unquote, hate seeing my daughter cry. The father of the surviving Rodin child started a GoFundMe account to help with legal bills he acquired to gain custody of his toddler-age daughter. Jake Wagner still can't quite bring himself to tell his 2.5-year-old daughter that her mommy is dead. It's the finality of that word that stops him. He worries about the tow-headed toddler's unpredictable reaction. There will be, he knows, so many questions. He's concerned, too. She may become frightened. He knows there will come a day when he will have to tell Sophia that her mom, Hannah Rodin, was shot and killed with 7 of her extended family members on April 22nd. He knows another day will arrive when he and she will make the trip to the cemetery. Sorry, this is so ridiculous.
Jesus, he's so extra.
Where her mom is buried alongside 2 of her uncles and her maternal grandparents. I've told her that mommy is with Jesus and we will see her again later, Wagner said. I don't know if she knows Hannah isn't coming back. I don't know if she understands. How could she? In addition to her mom, also killed were her grandparents, Christopher Rodin, 40, Dana Rodin, 37, her uncles, Clarence Frankie Rodin, 20, and Christopher Rodin Jr., 16, a great-uncle, Kenneth Rodin, 44, and a cousin, Gary Rodin, 38. Also killed was Frankie Rodin's fiancée, Hannah Gilly, 20. 2 of her cousins, Ruger Rodin, then 6 months, and Brentley Rodin, 3, along with her newborn sister Kylie, were found alive and physically unhurt in the trailers they share with their parents. The investigation is now in its 4th month, with no stated motive nor suspects and no arrests, and as the criminal case is moving along, so is the business of custody and estates. Neither is easy. Hate seeing my daughter cry. This is Wagner's new reality. Full-time, single dad with mounting legal bills. With a new job that pays half of what he was making to ensure he is close to Sophia. But close still means the 23-year-old makes a daily commute from Peebles to Cincinnati, a 2.5-hour daily drive. Wagner won custody of his little girl last month in Pike County, he said, and while the ruling was not unexpected, the legal bills were. This week, Wagner set a GoFundMe account in an effort to defray the legal bills and other unexpected associated costs. He didn't know about the website until his mother mentioned it to him. He said he didn't. Angela actually drew it up, so of course. He said he didn't want to draw attention to himself or to his daughter, but also didn't see a way out of the debt he has incurred since the homicide. These were not expenses I was supposed to have. I was just supposed to be able to spend time with her and give her a happy childhood. She's only 2.5 years old, Wagner wrote on the page of the crowd fundraising site. Sophie and I are asking for enough to settle the fees that we acquired due to the horrific tragedy to her mommy. We want to get our lives back, he wrote. I hate seeing my daughter cry.
What a piece of shit.
I know. I'm like reading this. I'm like, wait till you hear this. Wagner set a fundraising goal of $20,000, but said his legal bills were not quite that high. But he added his legal bills were 4 times more than what he expected. The former over-the-road truck driver and his trained mechanic has maxed out his credit cards. He said he is paying his lawyer what is left over after he pays his other bills every month. It hardly makes a dent. Hannah Roden and Wagner shared custody of Sophia, who was supposed to be with her mom that fateful Friday evening, he said. But Wagner picked her up a day earlier than normal. I reckon we missed it by just hours.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
You piece of, okay, first of all, whatever, Jake. But okay, so they had a forensic accountant testify the other day, okay? And this guy went through everything, all of their finances. But you know, the one thing he couldn't locate was that GoFundMe and where that money went and how much was collected. But there was a lot of money paid to George Wagner, George, the one that's on trial, out of Frederica, which is Billy's mom's account. A ton of money. And that was the other thing that I really think that even if the jury takes Jake's account with a grain of salt, right, or they just reject it wholly, I don't see how they can, but if they were to, I don't think that it's necessary at this point with that forensic accountant and that part he talks about money and bills and stuff like that. Okay, Jake, you need to stop. All right, because the accountant already went through your finances, sir, and y'all had a ton of credit cards. Y'all were all living together, so stop playing. What bills did you have?
They got hundreds of thousands of dollars from all that insurance shit they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. I couldn't believe it when I was reading that article. I'm like, what a shit.
The audacity. He's such a but it's too scared.
Yep.
Too scared. Really, what he needs to be worried about. Look, Jake is going to have trouble in prison because of the crime he committed. Period. He killed 2 women and so when he testified to this part, when he unalived Hannah Roden, she fell out of the bed because he unalived Dana. He shot her one time. Then he went and shot at Hannah, right? Then he went back to Dana, and then he went back to Hannah and shot her again and had to
sat her up. To
breastfeed, and he testified about why he did it because he said he didn't know how long it would be until somebody found them, and so he was worried the baby would need to eat. And when he unalived Frankie and Hannah Gilley, he didn't even see the baby in the bed. So the fact that he missed the baby is a miracle. It wasn't. He didn't like. That's his testimony.
He shot him and didn't even notice him till he leaned over.
Exactly.
He said he leaned over and saw Hannah. He could have totally hit that baby by accident.
I don't see. There's a part of me that just does not believe him. I think he put those kids I think he put the babies in the bed. That's what I think. I don't believe him. I think he's just a sick twist, and he did it too.
You get the idea that he was thinking about killing Brentley too, because he said at one point he was worried that Brentley might recognize him or something like that. Like if the baby would have woke up, would he have killed him? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the thing. When he was testifying about breaking into Frankie Roden's house, right? Initially, he couldn't get in. It was by sheer luck that he found that open window and crawled through. And then he had to unlock and let his brother and his father in the house. And when he threw a final dig about their house, he said that he was asked why he didn't pick up any of the shells, because that's where all the majority of the shells were found, or the casings were found in Frankie's trailer. And he said, well, we just didn't do it because frankly, it was too much of a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Like they weren't good housekeepers. It was a dig. And Yeah, I just he's and so he's scared. Like, come on, bruh. You're
Hmm.
scared. You unalived 5 people.
It's crazy to me. And then and how he says that when they were at Chris's, he just closed his eyes and shot. Like he's lucky that he didn't hit his dad in the crossfire too. I think that's why he said Billy had like a nervous breakdown or whatever.
I
And his
I don't believe that either. I think they went in there and did what they did, and they were cold and they were calculating about it, period.
You think he was just saying that to try and make him look like they cared?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
probably.
there was a point at his, plea hearing and, where he pled, and he smirked, and it was just the most, um, evil. And I'm not dramatic at all, but, like, and I don't really, like, get into that kind of stuff. I won't pay too much attention to that, but,
Mm.
that smirk was just evil. Just evil.
And and his obsession with Norman Reedus is so strange to me too. Like
I
he
mean,
dyed his
look
hair to look like him, and then watch that. I knew he watched that video to pump himself up. I knew he was gonna say that because
look here. The Boondock Saints 1 and 2, 1 is, in my opinion, far better than 2,
yeah,
except for the
way
fact that, um, I think it's way better. There's supposed to be a third one, but, that's been in the works forever and a day, and it's never happened, so who
better.
knows? But anyway, um, it's a good movie, but to be watching the second one, although, okay, I'll throw him a little bit of a bone here. To be able to find the first Boondock Saints streaming is very hard, because it's sometimes like it'll be on
Mhm.
Amazon Prime for a while, then they'll take it off. It's on HBO Max, then they'll take it off. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, they don't
maybe
put.
yeah, maybe he had to settle for Boondock Saints too, but whatever, whatever. I mean, he's just trash. That whole family is just absolute trash. Angela too. Angela too. She's trash.
Yeah.
Absolute trash. And there's some audio between Angela and Jake, and she's basically so this is when they flew. Angela flew with, Sophia and Bovine to Alaska, and she's just telling Jake essentially how, like, naughty, Sophia has been, and that she's just, like, picking on Bullvine and just being extra mean. And I'm just thinking to myself, first of all, what kind of grandma snitches out their granddaughter or their grandchild, period? I would
Yeah.
never. If I had my grandbabies, I would be like, oh, they were angels. I don't care if they set the whole house on fire, I'd lie and
Mhm.
cover for them, but not Angela. And, second of all, she's clearly acting out. I mean, I didn't realize until, Beth Ann took the stand, that they stayed in a motel, all of them in one room,
In one
except for Billy.
room.
Yes, for a week
Yeah, that's weird.
before moving back to Ohio.
And this
Like,
poor girl thinking they're gonna move to a farm, and then
bless
she
her heart, she had
finds out.
no idea what was coming. None. Bless her
No.
heart. I mean, and I frankly think that, the church situation, I think that was Angela, and I think that Angela was scoping out the church, because I think she was looking for somebody for Jake. To be quite honest with you, I do, I
Mm.
do, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that they're just so weird too. Like she was hiding, and then they're like they make such a big deal out of things like her leaving the room could have reporters
Yes. Well,
coming to bother her. I guess they were afraid that she would share like.
I think that they were afraid. Well, yeah, they were definitely afraid that she would talk. But more than that, there's something about Beth that she's incredibly, like, book smart.
Mm,
You can tell, but she's very naive to the world,
Yeah,
and
well, probably 'cause she
very,
was with Amish for so many years too,
well,
you know?
right, and she's very honest. And so if
Yeah.
somebody were to ask her something, she may not realize what they're asking her and just give an answer that could get them in trouble. Like how she explained when they ended up moving to back over to Rita's property, to a house over there, and how they painted the rooms, one pink and one blue, so that
Oh,
if
yeah, in case
CPS
CPS
ever, mm-hmm,
yeah, yeah, that that's slick. I didn't even like that they even
isn't it
thought
though?
about that. Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
it though? Like
mhm,
they were ready to like bullshit their way through all. I really
yeah,
think that they thought after so much time that they were going to get away with it. But I will tell you,
I
you
think
got to
they
go
did
back
too.
and listen to that audio, Kate, because there is whenever they sold their house, okay, the Wagners did, and they get a
The one on Peterson Road, or
yes, the one
okay,
on Peterson Road. So the person that purchased that house called Jake, and that's another thing. That home on Peterson Road, guess whose name that was in?
Ooh.
Jake's.
Oh yeah,
It
because they
was
had good credit, right? They said that
yes.
Jake was
Jake, that's
registered.
yes, so Angela and Billy done jacked up their credit. So when the boys became turned 18, they just started using their credit.
Was she a Mennonite living near the Amish, or was she living with the Amish?
It was a little difficult to completely um understand it. I think that
It
she
sounded
was
like
living.
to me, she said that she like lived amongst them.
That's
Like,
what it sounded like to me. Like you can't like I feel like, and I don't know a whole lot about the Amish or the Mennonites, but I have watched the shows on TLC, and it's not like a halfway deal. You're either in or you're out. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And so I feel like she was like in, you can't live like, you know what I mean?
She lived
So,
near them and semi followed their ways. Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, because she
So,
said, I guess when they stayed at the hotel the night of their wedding, she said like, because, like, I think she said, quote unquote, because she was Amish or practiced it maybe,
mhm.
that she had no experience with sex and didn't want to have sex that night, and instead he just asked her for like all her information, like
All
her
for personal information, and I need your date of birth, your birth certificate, give me your social security number. I need your passcodes for your
bank
phone,
card,
bank cards, the PIN number to your bank. He wanted it all. Okay, you're not going to let me in the chones. Let me get all your personal info then, ma'am. But he said she even said see, I thought so. She said he didn't respect that, and that's kind of how she left it, and it wasn't pressed further. And I'm glad that it wasn't, because you could tell she was uncomfortable. But
yeah,
I really thought that that bit of testimony would get back to Jake, and that would make him um, reconsider testifying on video, at least have audio, because I really thought he'd want to be like, well, that part that would get to him. Like, it's
yeah,
one thing for you to call me a murderer, but you're not going to say that I essayed you. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I figured
um
that would do it, but no.
so did she mention she had it? I don't remember hearing that. I didn't get it all the way through though, that she had a child that is no longer living. Was that
She's
Jake's baby?
I don't they didn't get into that too much. And I don't I bet if I went through the group, like if I searched, I could probably find something about it, but I kind of haven't
Mhm.
wanted to. But the way that so the question was, do you have any children? And she hesitated, and she said none living. So
Oh,
I mean, I don't know. She is no long she's not married now either. So I would imagine maybe yes, that maybe she had some miscarriages or something. I don't
maybe.
know. I don't know, but bless her heart, she was I mean, you know what else I noticed too that I thought was very, very interesting? was that Hannah had been molested as a young girl, and so did Elizabeth or
Oh
Beth
yeah.
Ann. And it's interesting and so had Tabitha. And it's
It's
interesting.
strange almost. Like
Okay, so you know how like remember when we were in elementary school and we used to get to watch like film strips. You're a little younger than me, so you probably actually got VCR. VCRs were upgrade by junior high for me.
what did you watch?
So
Like beta tapes?
no, like film strips, asshole. So
That's the only thing I can remember.
no, like actual, okay, that's how they actually, well, they still do in movie theaters, with the projector and all that
Okay,
shit
yeah,
like
yeah, I
that.
know.
Yeah,
We
but they
had
were,
we had VCR, but then we'd had that like projector where they put the clear paper on, and they
oh,
would
that's an
like
overhead. That's different. This
my
is like an
pop used
actual,
to my pop used to tape porn on beta tapes.
oh my God. Don't be ratting out your pops. What's wrong with you?
He's in heaven now, God bless him. But
Bless him. Well, yeah, so,
oh man,
so
that's the only reason I know beta tapes because I remember thinking there was like there was a kid movie on it one time. Well, it was labeled a kid movie.
oh, sweet
I was like,
Jesus.
oh yeah, I want to watch this movie and put it in, and I'm scarred for life. So
I bet you were. And I never watched anything on beta. I've only ever watched VHS. But anyway, back in the day, how they used to show us like National Geographic, okay, how they would have like the nature um, shows, or not shows, but movies or whatever,
yeah,
and how they would show um, like lionesses going after like caribou or whatever, or
yeah,
wildebeest or whatever it is, but they would circle around and watch for the weak one. I feel like that's what Jake and Angela did. They saw they're
yeah,
predators.
like
That
weak women who they can
yes,
control, and
yes, broken women, broken women. I think that Tabitha and Beth Ann have gotten incredibly strong through this, because I was really proud of them for not opting out. I was proud of them for getting up on that stand. And there were a few times, especially with Tabitha, when when she sort of looked at George, and you could tell, like she's like, "You're a piece of shit. You treated me horribly. You treated me horribly, and I was scared of you, and that's why you had custody of Bullvine for the time
oh,
that
she
you did."
straight up like said that to him out
No,
loud.
it was just the way that she looked at him.
Oh, okay.
Like she would looked at him like, you know what, you kept me under your thumb, but not anymore.
Well, hearing I didn't listen to her testimony, but
Oh, you should.
I did hear that at the one fight they had where she was slapping him and then she left and then Angela grabbed her gun and she had to like hide under the car.
Yeah.
It sounds terrifying. I would be
It
I'd be
yes,
terrified.
because everything was a freaking family decision. That's what got me, is that whenever there was an issue in that home, and it was with either Tabitha or with Beth, the whole family confronted them. So it was, all four of the Wagners against one
Yeah.
person.
No privacy between
Mm-mm, mm-mm,
yeah.
none. And so I feel for those women, and I thought it was incredibly brave of them to not only get up there on the stand in front of George, but to do it on camera as well. I thought they showed tremendous strength. I was very proud of both of them. I was rooting for them. I was like, "That's right," because there was a couple of times when uh, Beth was asked some questions by the prosecution, and it was the way that they asked the question. They weren't like, but they misstated what she said, and she would correct them. And I thought that was, and she, bless her heart, she stopped just short of calling Jake stupid, to be quite honest with you. She's like, he wasn't into like learning new things. And he basically, he wasn't even into church either.
Yeah. So Annalise said Beth has said on a video a few years ago that it was Jake's baby.
Okay. Well, that would make sense given that she's never been remarried or that she's not remarried and that, she wasn't with anybody before Jake. So that would make sense. I
I'm
just never
curious
looked
if
into
they
it.
like made her like abort the baby or something, because I remember she specifically talks about a time where she had a conversation with Angela, and Angela was saying that
Mm,
asking her if they plan to have a baby, and that it was a really bad time to have a baby because of everything going on and stuff
hmm
like that. So it
I
makes me
mean,
wonder.
I certainly think that it's entirely possible. I mean, I don't know. I think that, that Angela, would I put that past Angela? No. But I also, at the same time, I don't know that Beth would have done that. I don't know though. She might. I don't know. Bless her heart. I don't know. You could tell that she was just very. She was completely out of her element, and bless her heart, she did try to reach out a couple of times for help and like what to do, advice, and the person that she reached out to was the former family that she had lived with, and the guy wasn't very helpful. He actually like sort of said, "Are you sure you're not just being dramatic?" And this was after the whole incident where Jake said that he would put her in the barn and beat her with Lucille, like from Walking Dead, and
Mhm.
bulldoze the barn and light it on fire.
Oh my gosh!
So
What about their idea to make a bulletproof bulldozer to um break them out of jail? Did you hear that?
yes,
Like
there's
what?
a right. Like,
A
wouldn't
bulletproof bulldozer to
why don't
crash into a jail?
right? Why don't you just steal a tank? I mean, that would be better. Idiots. You can't make a bulletproof bulldozer. I mean, come on, idiots.
I saw that. I'm like, who in the world would come up with that idea?
Yeah, and there was another thing that Angela had said to Beth at one point that I was going to bring up, but now I can't remember. Angela's seems to be a very, very cruel person, and I really, I have a feeling there's going to be a similar hearing with respect to her testimony, and I really hope that the judge doesn't fall for she is in danger. I really think that the reason that the judge did what he did today, the reason he ruled the way he ruled, is because Jake had already been on the stand and given so much testimony without video or audio that I don't think he wanted to change it mid trial or mid testimony, and I just don't
Yeah,
think.
like it was all the way through. When does
Yeah,
Angela testify? Do we know?
so the way that the schedule is supposed to be is once Jake is finished testifying completely, there will be more audio played from the 2018 wiretaps, which I would imagine are going to go to backing up some of the things that Jake testified to, because that would be the only, otherwise they should have just played it all at once. But this must be to back up what Jake said. And then it's supposed to be Angela. Now, there's no court tomorrow.
Oh, yeah,
There's
I heard there
something going
wasn't.
on,
Yeah, I heard about that.
but
That
it'll
there
be
was,
back Friday. So
but
I'll be,
probably like next week sometime, maybe.
probably. I'm thinking like Monday or probably Tuesday, just to be safe. Probably Tuesday. Maybe Monday, but probably Tuesday. It's
Yeah,
because there's going to have to be a hearing for
I'll have
her.
to opt out of my nap next week.
Well, listen, I opted out of my nap yesterday when I was covering the Brooks
Oh
closing
man,
arguments.
that guy.
Yeah, that guy. And then today he was I thought he was going to rage after um, the verdicts were read, but he was completely subdued. I think what he's doing though is saving it up for Monday because they're going to start sentencing procedures on Monday. So we'll see. He's still trying to argue subject matter jurisdiction, which I find hilarious because, like, bruh, the trial is over. It's gone to the jury at this point. I think subject matter jurisdiction, that ship has sailed. It's been
That
established.
judge needs an award,
Bless
seriously.
her heart. And
Right?
then when she was reading the jury instructions, bless her heart, it kept going through my mind. I hope she doesn't have to go home and read stories to her kids tonight, because I don't think that's happening. Bless her heart. All those counts that she had, all the instructions that she had to read, and I mean, there's 76 counts, and they found him guilty on all 76
Yep.
counts, even the bail jumping, which I thought, you know. And
I
then
don't,
at
I
the
don't
end,
think him representing himself did any good for him whatsoever. He
oh
came
gosh,
off
no,
so like, if you want to, I mean, he didn't do any good for him in front of the jury. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
nope, not at all.
And what I found so astonishing is that even though he couldn't see it, the judge and even the dadgum prosecution were looking out for him and trying to keep him from really looking bad in front of the jury.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, he made himself look horrible.
oh yeah, he's crazy. But anyway, I just wanted to pop in and because I haven't been, because there's been nobody to talk to about the Pike trial, because you know Jake and his bitch ass opting out, you know. So, but you were talking about it tonight. I was like, oh God, I'm so excited! Finally, I get to talk about the case, because I've been wanting to watch this. Oh, and guess who else is coming up soon?
Who?
Sarah Boone, November 7th.
Oh.
Suitcase, yeah, no malicious, no intentional, yeah, Sarah Boone, yeah,
Ooh, we'll have to check
yeah.
that out too.
Oh, Ice Cube looking ass talking about it was a good day. It was a good day. We did crafts. We painted. We had snacks, a little wine, music, circle time. Get the fuck out of here, Sarah.
That's the one who said she was playing like hide and seek or something.
Yes, but here's the deal, Kate. When you play, I'm sure you're familiar with the game hide and seek, right?
Yeah,
Have you?
I've never heard of hide and seek as zipping someone in a suitcase and leaving them while taunting them on video.
If you're the seeker, you're supposed to be counting. So why are you helping somebody to hide? That's not how the game is played. That's not any kind of fucking game I ever played. And we've all, well, maybe not you, because you're a little young, but we all watched that episode of Punky Brewster where they were playing hide and go seek, and Alan decided to get in the refrigerator, and how that went. Punky and Sherry had to give him CPR. So you know not to get, like, we all learn not to get into stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a lesson learned.
I mean, maybe when you're like a little kid and you can fit in there easily for a minute when your cousin zips you in or something, but not like a grown ass man in a whole suitcase, you know?
Okay, well, I have a suitcase that's very similar to the one that was used. And Dr. B and I were roasting Sarah Boone last week, and I was telling Dr. B, that's what we forgot to do, is put me in that suitcase and see if you can get out. I mean, and she's like, we're not putting you in a suitcase, Jen. And I was like, we're not keeping me in this suitcase. That's why you're here. If I can't get out by myself, then you're there to get me out. I mean, you're not going to get it on the fucking phone and taunt me. Right. You're not going to taunt me and be like, that's my name, don't wear it out. You know, you'll let me out. So yeah, I just want to pop up and talk about the Pike case with you. Thank you for letting me come on your panel. I'm glad you're covering this case. You're welcome. I'm glad you're covering it.
I'm like totally invested in this case. I haven't been able. I take my naps in the morning, so I'll go back and catch some stuff, but I haven't watched. I have to go back and watch some of the ones I missed.
Okay, so this is what I've been doing. So I've been streaming the morning, and then I get, once they take their like first morning break, because usually that's about 2 hours, and I'm good for about 2 hours, and then I do whatever I have to do around the house, right? And that is just in time for them to come back from lunch, And so I put the YouTubes on the TV and I'd be taking a nap listening to the Pike
That's
trial.
smart.
That's what you got to do. See, yeah. See, I'm all about the
Or
naps.
just put it
Naps are
on until I
important.
fall asleep so I catch the beginning. Yeah, I got a
Yes.
7-year-old, so as soon as he comes home, it's on, you know. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
I only have one 7-year-old, so I'm his entertainment for the rest of the night.
Bless your hearts. You got to have another one. That's why I had 4. They
I
can all
know.
play together. They all
Yeah.
entertain them each other.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so he's usually by himself and mom. Today he said mom so many times. I said, if you say mom one more time, and you know he did, he signed mom to me. Like
Oh,
the sign language.
I already love him because that reminds me of some things my kids would do. So I
Totally
told
did. I couldn't believe it. I was like, because he's been coming home every day telling me about his new, the new sign language he learns. I guess they're learning it in first
Aw,
grade. And
I
I'm
love
like, if
that.
you say mom one more time, then he walks up and puts like his thumb on his nose and makes like the hands, like the sign.
Bless it. I
You would.
can't. I love it. That is so cute.
I
One
love
time I told my kids I was changing my name and I wasn't telling them what it was, and they just started calling me by my government name, Jennifer. I'm like, that's not it. Well, how come you answered then? Yeah. My
Yeah.
kids should have been lawyers, all of them. I hope
Yep.
my youngest will become a lawyer. I really do. I'm pushing for it.
No, my kid's always wheeling and dealing and making some smart ass comment. I'm like,
Well,
but
gee,
they're
wonder
still
where he gets that from, Kate.
right.
I remember the
From
signal
me.
chat. Those were fun times. They really were. Those were fun
I was
times.
bad in signal chat.
Yeah, but it was fun. We had some fun.
Yeah.
Remember when we used to get
It
on
was
there
like
with
just a whole roasting chat,
Yes, and then like whenever we would go in Discord and that one night that we were all singing, Kay was in there singing. I don't know what she was.
Oh, it was
Can't
so
remember.
off key too.
Yeah, all of us, but we were all like on a different part of the song because
Mm,
everybody's
had a delay.
had a delay. Those were fun times. I mean, I know everybody thinks, oh, Critical K, and there was a lot of plotting. There really wasn't. It was mainly just joking and laughing.
Yeah, everyone thought we were. I mean, we were shit talkers, but it was more on like a fun,
Yeah,
like,
talking shit, not fucking plotting taking over the whole world
yeah,
or anything
yeah.
like
We
that.
weren't
Nothing.
like doxing people and looking up people. We were
No,
just shit talking.
no malicious. There was nothing malicious in there. It was. I think people made too big of a deal out of it. It wasn't
They
that deep.
did.
It really wasn't. It was just, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it was a good
I
time
agree.
though. It was a good time. Those were
It
good.
was.
Those were fun times. All right, babe. Well, I'm gonna get off here, but I'll be in chat. I'll let you
All
get
right.
back to your
I'm
show.
about
I'm
to hop
sorry.
off
And
anyway.
are you okay? All right.
I've been
Thanks
on
for
here
letting me
too
up.
long. Thank you
All
for
right.
coming up. I
You're
love talking
welcome.
cases with
Well,
you.
I love talking cases with you too. All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Good
All
night.
right. Good night. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely has my wittiness. And you know what? His dad has 3 brothers, and they're all like that too. Like always playing pranks and doing the most. So it's like the best of both worlds on his wittiness and, things like that. He's gonna be funny when he gets older. But yeah, he definitely floored me when he signed mom to me because I was like, you know what? If you say mom one more time, I need a break. Then he signed it. It's like, of course you would. You would. All right, but yeah, I'm hopping off. I've been on here for too many hours, but uh that's okay, Annalise. I went over his whole testimony for the past 3 days of all the notes I could find on it. If you want to look yourself, Pretty Lies and Alibis covers it. I got a lot of information from her. She does a really good job. And then I think the guy's name is Jason Plitcher. Hold on, let me go. There was a girl who had really good ones too, and I can't remember her name. All right, James Pilcher. Hold on, I'll send you guys the links real quick in case you want to follow them. I hope they don't let her opt out, Nina. I'd love to hear Angela's. All right, this one. This is the guy that the docket dude. He's the guy that or Chasing Paper 89. He's the one that Pretty Lies and Alibis. She gets her info from. There was a girl too. I don't know if I have. Maybe I'll just get rid of more case updates because I plan on talking about more stuff in the title, and then I'll tag it because I put the tags like in YouTube Studio. You can add tags. I put them there because I didn't have room to fit it in the title. But since we pretty much talked about this the whole time, I could probably take out plus more case updates and put Pike County. I planned on talking about Quentin too, but it's gotten it's gone over a little too long. I can't remember the other person that. All right, here. If you guys want to find all the latest, just go on Twitter. This is what I do. I type in Jake Wagner, and then I hit latest, and it's just a Todd Dykes. That's another guy. Hold on. And it'll basically give you all the news reporters tweeting. There's a woman who was really detailed, and I can't remember who it was. Hold on. If I can find her in the list, I'll share it. Just give me a second. Yes, here it is. Anjanette Levy. She's the correspondent for the Long Crime Network. She does a phenomenal job in tweets. There's her link too. Yes, thank you again, Jen Lou. And I think I have. Do I have Jen's? Can you? Do I have Jen's thing in the list? If not, I'm gonna add it. I'll check Nightbot. I feel like I did, but I don't remember. If I didn't, I'll add it tonight so you guys can easily put in Jen's YouTube channel. Alright, I'm gonna add it real quick. So it'll be like exclamation point Jen Lou, no spaces. And let me get the link real quick. Thank you, Thug. I'm putting it in right now so you guys can just easily type in Nightbot. Check out more case studies. Okay, I got it. All right. Try it. Or I can try it. I think I can do it from here. Let's see if it works. Come on, Nightbot. Yay, it worked. Okay. Yes, if you haven't checked out Jen Lou's channel, go to the Ward Case Studies. She does awesome coverage of cases, and every morning she or at least when the trial's on, she covers all the trials, but she'll go on to like noon, like she said, and play the beginning of the trials live so you can watch with her. It's a lot of fun. And she does roasts, which are the best. I was cracking up when she did the Lori Vallow one with Benny Keys. She's funny. Yay, it works. All right, guys. Maybe I'll be back tomorrow. Let's see, either tomorrow or Friday. And we can talk about stuff. All right, well, I'm going to end it. We can talk about Quentin tomorrow. I feel bad because I know Parker wanted to talk about Quentin. We just got to talking about this too long. But Yeah, tomorrow we can talk about that because there's been new stuff happening every day we could talk about. All right, good night, guys. Thank you for coming. I'm super stuffed up. I need to go take some medicine. Good night. Bye, guys.